Good evening, everybody. My name is Jannine and I run ADHD Wise UK. I'm also founding director of Neurodiversity Network CIC, trading as Neurodiversity Hub, which is a physical building in Northamptonshire from which we'll be delivering our offering across the UK and locally. I am flanked by my beautiful daughters and we want to talk to you this evening about autism and ADHD and what it's like to live in a family like ours. And I'm in the doghouse quite literally this evening, just now. So my girls are going to embarrass you by telling you how I made them feel really stressed. But yeah, not medicated because not really properly working today. Not that I probably medicate these days anyway. And yeah, I kind of took my eye off the ball, and I will let them tell you.
Went to go pick up something that she'd ordered on Facebook Marketplace, which was supposed to be quite local to us. And because it was near to the dog that we're getting in a few weeks, obviously she just had to drop in, even though we had this. So she came in with a few minutes to spare, which really worried me because I get very anxious. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it. It was great. But very happy to be here. Hello, everyone.
So yeah, expect me to sort of chuckle and sort of feel a little bit embarrassed at times, because we are going to have quite an honest and open conversation. I am a bit impulsive as part of me having ADHD, but so are the girls in their own way. I'll let them introduce themselves properly. So Vicky, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi. Hi everyone, I'm Jannine's eldest, and I'm a little crazy. I'm a little crazy in my own special unicorn kind of way. I'm like Mum, I'm very time blind. I get myself in a situation where I'm like, oh no, I've run out of time.
Mm-hmm. So what are you diagnosed with, Vicky?
I'm diagnosed with ASD and ADHD.
And when were you diagnosed with ASD?
When I was 8 years old. My ADHD was diagnosed when I was 19.
And how do you feel about all of that?
I feel good knowing now that I have ADHD, because my life wasn't always easy. My ADHD was not noticed. Perhaps my life would have been different had it been noticed in my school years, but that didn't happen. So what happened was I got myself in a lot of situations, and some places I got support and some places I didn't when I really needed it.
Yeah. And so we went to adult services to ask for help, and they said, we think she has ADHD as well as her autistic spectrum condition. And I didn't believe in ADHD back then. So I was quite cross. But they said, you know, Jannine, if we're wrong, fair enough, but if we're right, there's everything to gain. And Vicky took her first ADHD medication. For me, it was like watching a key turn in a lock, because she went from really struggling to doing really, really well, suddenly getting merits and things.
Yes, I was really struggling in college. But once I had my diagnosis and I had my first medication, I started, like exactly as my mum just said, I started thriving. I was getting merits. I was not close to being kicked out of college. And I gained a lot of confidence in myself. I started to grow as a person because I caged myself in quite a lot, but I didn't have to anymore.
And you started getting friends as well.
I did, yeah.
So next to be diagnosed was Will. who is Becca's twin brother, then me, and then Becca, for whom we had to go private. So I'll let Becca introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Becca. I'm 18. I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was I 15 or 16?
16, I think.
I think I was 16. My last year at real school, I got my diagnosis. My school was very unhelpful with getting my ADHD diagnosis. One person in particular, but won't name names, who made it very difficult and actually impossible for me to get a diagnosis on the NHS, so I went privately. And started taking ADHD medication, which I still take, and it completely changed my life. Not just the medication, but the diagnosis. It really changed everything. It made me understand myself. It gave me so much, so much. It gave me everything. I really struggled when I started to have problems with my mental health at school. There was just way too much being put on me, and I could no longer cope with the ADHD in combination with those things. And so getting that diagnosis, explaining that and being able to explain to others made all the difference in the world.
So that's kind of the us introduced, I suppose. But as I say, Becca has a twin brother who's also diagnosed with ADHD. He is actually around. He may sort of like pop his face in. But it's interesting, isn't it, that it won, and then we all, as a mum, I became sort of like aware of all sorts of things, and then suddenly. Then the rest of my children got diagnosed and supported, as did I. So it happens quite often that we work these things through. I have one person getting diagnosed and the rest sort of following on. So if anyone would like to ask any questions, please raise a hand or put a question in the chat. Remembering again that this is being recorded with a view to being added to the YouTube channel. So don't share anything that you wouldn't want the public to make. Hi, Will.
Hello there.
And in comes Will, and things fall over, because that's kind of like part of the neurodiverse the stuff as well. So we said this was going to be a relaxed thing. So we're definitely being true to that. So if you want to ask a question, that's lovely. Absolutely fine. We're quite open about everything. It's interesting that girls often aren't diagnosed, women are often not diagnosed. For me, now looking back, it was like the elephant in the room. It's really obvious that I had ADHD, and that was a lot of the reason that I struggled. And that it just seems really, really sort of clear and obvious. And actually the same with Vicky, because Vicky growing up was just like my mini me, but like amplified. And now I know why. Because she is mini me amplified in lots and lots of ways, because we have a sort of similar makeup in terms of our neurology. Although Vicky's predominant condition is her autistic spectrum, whereas for Becca and I, we're definitely much more along the ADHD side of things. So definitely got both things at play. And sometimes the conditions play together and help, and other times they go against each other. And one of the things Vicky really likes is structure and routine, which is part of her autistic need, but then her ADHD makes it hard to maintain that, and the need for novelty often means that she'll sort of self-sabotage that. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah. Not even spot on. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay, what else would you like to say?
I lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry, everyone.
That's okay. We can come back to you. Becky's got a question. I can't see it because I haven't got my glasses on.
To your daughters, as a teen, how did you explain ADHD to your friends? I think that most of my friends were fairly familiar, because they all spent a lot of time with my twin brother as well, and he is the ADHD stereotype. He's like Hurricane Will. He's wonderful. Yeah, so they were quite familiar. But the way that I explained it to my friends who were less familiar, to newer friends, was it's kind of like having these things that most people experience on a minor level, but to the extreme. So not being able to concentrate on something you find boring is something that everyone has. But in ADHD, it's the extreme level of that. So that's the way I described it a lot. And a lot of people confused that I was combined type instead of just intensive type, because I don't present as particularly hyperactive, but that's just because I'm asked a lot and I got really, really good at it through my childhood. So I had a lot of high expectations, but that's how I explained it to my friends, is I basically just have to pretend all day, so I get really, really tired. But they were all quite familiar with it anyway, I think.
What about you, Vicky? How do you explain not just the ADHD, but also your autistic self to people? Should we start with one? Just do the ADHD first.
I'll start with the ADHD. I was 19, so I was nearing my 20s, so I wasn't going to be a teenager for much longer. But when I came back after getting confirmation from my assessment, I went back to my classmates and they were like, how did it go? And I'm like, yeah, it's confirmed I have ADHD. And they were like, makes sense. Because they've also had experiences with people who have confirmed or non-confirmed ADHD, or should I say undiagnosed ADHD. So they had understood to a degree, and they didn't see me any differently whether I was diagnosed or not. My autistic spectrum, I still struggle to explain it to my friends to this day. I apologize, I have a bit of a tickle in my throat. People tend to ask me, what's the difference between ADHD and Asperger's? And sometimes I struggle to decipher that. But like my mum just explained, it's like one side likes to be like organized and have a specific arrangement, whereas the other one is like the more like the laid back side of it all. Maybe not laid back is the word I'm looking for, but more like it's okay, you've got time, it's the whole timeline thing kicking in again, and before you know it, you run out of time and you're like, oops. But how do I explain it to people? I explain it like that to people and they get an idea, but it doesn't really explain the Asperger's side. And that's because I get confused of what it is sometimes. I'll admit, sometimes I get confused what Asperger's is. People tend to just look at how I act and behave, and they're like, okay, that's just how Vicky works, and we love her for the way she is. Some people find me a bit hard, but eventually they get used to it, and I'm okay with that. I'm impatient, and I try to not overwhelm them, because sometimes I can be. I like Becca mentioned about our brother Will. He is a bit of a hurricane, so I could be a bit of a hurricane myself. You two just nodding. How dare you?
Different energy.
Yeah. So my energy is a bit high. It's high for some people, but eventually I'm like, okay, I need to settle down, and then take a deep breath, and I come back down a little bit. But sometimes I have to be reined back in, but my friends are okay with that. They wouldn't have me any other way.
Yeah, you're very. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I think is nice, is that you may not be able to sort of pull out which threads of you are say autism and which bits are say ADHD, but you are quite comfortable with the neurodiverse way of looking at things, aren't you?
I am, yeah.
So we spent quite a lot of time first lockdown on neurodiversity celebration type projects, and did quite a lot of talking about what that means, and that even though you might not be able to thread out which bits are which, it's okay to just be you, and that celebration of difference.
Yeah,
you are unique, you are rainbows and unicorns, but yeah, oh yes, people to admit.
Oh.
Sorry, people
got distracted.
Oopsies. Right, got it.
Got it.
Okay.
There we go. It's sorry.
Okay.
Put it in there.
So yeah, that's kind of like that part of it. How to explain it to other people, I think, is really, really difficult. I personally try to explain it as sort of in the neurodiverse way, that difference is good, and that what I've learned is that to achieve what I need to do, I often need to do things differently. So I don't need to work harder to do things the same way that neurotypical people do them. I need to do them differently. So I need to work smart rather than hard, to get to those points. So the end point will probably be the same or similar, but the way of getting there is completely different, and not necessarily worse, just different. So yeah, that's sort of part of things. I actually can't see to read the notes because I was running late. I didn't grab my glasses.
Mostly just comments rather than questions. Someone said they're a disastrous perfectionist.
Yeah,
I hear that. I have a real problem with perfectionism, and it makes it impossible with the ADHD. I'm a slave to routine and rhythm, and I cannot actually go through with either with the ADHD, which is so much fun. Doesn't make my life stressful at all. Yeah.
I think that's actually one of the things that has been a real problem for us, is that we've recently moved, and that's another transition. And just as you have transitions in from primary to secondary, and then from secondary into college, whatever it happens to be, that transition of moving home, I think it took us a bit longer than it would other people to kind of just sort of start to bed down and sort of like work out where everything is. And it almost feels like every strategy you've ever had goes out the window and you have to start all over again. But actually it isn't like that. It just feels like that until you're kind of like, oh yeah, okay, and you get back into your groove. But it does feel, I just felt so discombobulated with the move, and I know that you guys have as well. But we're getting there now, sort of a month today. It's sort of like starting to feel a bit more like things are where they're supposed to be and how they're supposed to be.
It has been a month today.
Yeah, it's a month today. So yeah. So in lieu of any questions coming up,
Yep.
oh, I can't see it.
That's us trying to. Do you find change of routine impacts on your mental health?
Yeah, we're just going to sit here like nodding dogs now.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
really, really badly.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Because the amount of effort to regain that routine once it's been thrown out is just
draining.
And those rhythms and routines and those rituals are actually really, really, really important. And I remember when I left teaching and I started working for myself, I felt like I'd forgotten every single strategy I'd ever had, which I hadn't, but it just felt like that. So again, to do with transitions and change and all of those things. So
I feel like I'm like a cat. I can't deal with change unless it's on my terms. I really, really struggle when things are different, because you have to kind of readapt your life, and because as neurodiverse people we're always adapting our lives anyway, we come to this really rock solid way that we feel is helpful and that works for us, and then you just get the rug pulled out from under you and you're like, whoa. Just feel a bit dizzy. So yeah, I get quite, I don't even know what words I would use to describe the way I feel when big changes happen in my life. But I find it massively stressful, and I'm diagnosed ADHD and anxiety. So you can probably imagine that the that those two in combination make change quite difficult for me.
Yep, and this somebody said in the comments about reactive depression, and that's actually quite common. It isn't sort of full-on depression, but it is literally because everything has gone out the window and starting again, and actually very, very common in autistic spectrum as well as with ADHD. It's interesting, isn't it, that ADHD loves novelty, but actually doesn't like that sort of like change in doesn't like that transition, or can do really well at the beginning of the transition, and then the kind of like the wheels fall off a little bit, like a bit further down the line. So whilst it's novel, it's not too bad. And Willie's come and say hello. No, okay. So he's deliberately trying to distract us in true ADHD family style. So, Will.
Hello.
That's our brother.
Okay, yeah.
So, Will, what would you say was the biggest challenge of living in a family full of people with ADHD?
They are nuts.
No, to be a bit more constructive. What's the biggest challenge?
When it does get to a point where it is beyond frantic, we make the decision that enough's enough, and in so, well, sort it all out.
Okay, thanks for that. So we
So
can
not
let things get very chaotic, but then
as soon as it's too bad,
yeah, we can deal with it when it gets too bad. We can deal with it and rein it in.
turn it down enough.
Yeah, we can find solutions to problems, but
Yes,
we can
that's
cause
very
problems.
true.
We're a solution-focused family, but we actually need the solutions. So,
Yeah, like going off and looking at puppies when I'm supposed to be here, because I kind of got caught on impulse. So yeah, all fun and games. So
I wonder if it's easier or harder when all of you experience this. It's probably easier in the way that we all understand each other, and so there's a lot more acceptance and a lot less like anger. We deliver courses. Sorry, I didn't mean to be talking over everyone. We deliver services for parents, and we do some stuff with siblings of people with ADHD too and other neurodiverse conditions. And that lack of understanding causes a lot of problems, and we definitely don't have that issue. We all understand where each other are coming from. There's so we don't get angry with each other over these things, because we know that it's just
frustrated but not angry, and we don't take things personally.
Yeah, but I don't know, it is difficult.
I found the hummus in the cupboard and the breadsticks in the fridge this week, and I looked at it and I just laughed and wondered whether that was me or whether that was Becca, because we've both been at the hummus and I wasn't sure which one of us it was. But when I wasn't here, so when you sort of like, you're doing that sort of thing, you laugh because you realise it's not on purpose and it's just part of the way things are. But yes, I guess it does mean that there isn't somebody to pick up the slack on some of the rhythms and routines that need to happen. And I really struggle with paying bills and stuff like that, and I actually have to have a plan for getting those sorts of things done. And I must admit, when the kids were at school paperwork for me is like a full-time job. I couldn't deal with school paperwork at all. I really found it very, very difficult, and it's better now because they're older, but it's still a challenge for me. I still struggle with sort of domestic admin, and I can often be the one that I'm often the reason that we miss appointments and things is often down to me, and I want it to be better than that. And I have a plan. I have a Thursday morning sit down with somebody else to make sure things like that get sort of sorted, because that's the only way that it can happen. So I need a neurotypical input, if you like, being very, very honest. But I feel like rather than that being something that I would apologise to my children for now I see it as good role modelling, that actually probably throughout the rest of their lives they will need somebody to help them with those things, and that there's no shame in needing that help with those things, because the rest of my life, what I'm capable of doing, my ability to earn money at the same time as doing good is great. So the fact that I have to make a sort of like a an investment, if you like, in that time with somebody else is actually okay. But I did feel there wasn't an option when they were younger because we were skint. But perhaps part of the reason they were skint is because I couldn't get on top of things. So it's like chicken and egg. But I was the parent who was late getting their kids to school, struggled with getting the letters filled out.
Yeah, well, us having ADHD didn't help, did it? Because we would never remember. I wouldn't remember to give her a letter to get like a permission slip. She wouldn't remember to sign it. And if by some miracle that happened, she'd then forget to give it back to me. And if she managed to do that, I'd forget to give it in at school. So there was just a lot of obstacles in the way. Yeah.
And so it's quite challenging from those points of view, but actually sort of becoming solution focused about it. Probably it was necessary for us to have some sort of third party input, but that didn't happen. So, and that was just what that was. So there's only so much we can do about that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Someone said at least you understand each other and validate each other, maybe, and I definitely say that's true.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we do get it. Someone saying that their daughter without ADHD struggles more than their daughter with when it comes to family get-togethers. Family get-togethers are really stressful. Throwing neurodiversity into the mix, yeah, not that helpful. But all our cousins have ADHD too, don't they?
Yeah.
So family gatherings are a lot of fun. For us, I don't know about the neurotypical people, but for us, they're lots of fun.
Yeah, but there's still an aspect of depending on which group of family, but there is like in the wider circle of our family, there's still some sort of black sheeping sort of mentality, and that's not helpful. It's a bit of a disappointing family dynamic and quite common, but not helpful. And I had to learn to push back on that when it happened. And what I found was when it became apparent that it was not possible to black sheep me, my children would then be sort of, it would be pushed to them, and I was still going no, and having to push, and really had to change some of the extended family relationships and sort of pull back on some of them. Still have them, still care about those people, still love those people, but not engage with them to the same extent or as regularly, because actually that's not okay, and those are my boundaries, and I'm not going to be made to feel small, and I'm not going to allow my children to be made to feel small when they are not the only ones with challenges anyway. They are not the ones with the worst behaviour, actually. It's just that was our family dynamic, and challenging that was really, really, really difficult. So
someone said that having a daughter with ADHD has been the most amazing thing, so have someone who understands them.
Yeah,
which is great.
I agree.
Definitely lots of understanding. Someone said that they and their kids don't realise the way they do things is very neurodivergent, but their fiance gets driven insane by all the quirks. Yeah, yes. I think that's very relatable to a lot of neurotypical people in neurodiverse families. I think that's quite a universal experience.
Yes,
we hear that a lot.
If you are the one neurotypical person in a family of neurodiverse people, it is incredibly challenging, and you are the odd one out, and your way of being is actually the bit that sticks out, and everyone looks at you like your way of doing things is kind of like weird and odd. So yes, a bit of role reversal really from that point of view. So
someone has said that knowing that you have ADHD or ASC makes it easier to accept that you're going to need support, and it also makes others more understanding, and you, instead of feeling the shame, you feel very differently. Yeah, shame is a huge problem.
Shame is awful. It's an absolute negative human construct. One of the things I often say when I'm delivering training in schools is you cannot shame a child or a parent via a child into remembering PE kit, for example, because that if they're not remembering it, there's a reason they're not remembering it, and shame is never going to make them remember. In fact, them then associating PE kit with shame means they're less likely to remember the PE kit. So sort of like challenging those things with school and not allowing those things. When Vicky was younger, I wasn't as good as I got to be with Will and Becca at being that parent, the one that fought for their child. Vicky wasn't fortunate enough that I was I didn't really get it back then. So I don't think I was as supportive as I wish I had been in hindsight. And I often just agreed with what teachers were saying, and I know I'm a teacher, of course, but sort of my understanding of difference now, and I think I wouldn't be afraid to be that parent now, that says, actually, no, that's not okay, that's not good enough, and well, what are you doing to be part of that solution? Those are the things that I would now say that I didn't say back then because I didn't know to. And actually, Vicky's got quite hard to listen to stories of what it was like to be her in secondary school. I don't know if you feel able to share or want to share. You don't have to.
We're not backed up, are we, sis?
There's a few questions, but we're not backed up. No.
Okay. I was, during my lower school years, everything was fine. You get the usual like little squabbles like you get with little kids and everything. And I didn't get into trouble at my lower school very often at all. And I was often in the weekly golden yearbook for exceptional work. When I went to middle school, things did start to change because I was now falling behind on homework and I was not doing my homework, and I ended up getting into a lot of trouble, and I ended up going into detention, but I don't think that's what they called it. Some sort of like special like behavioral support unit kind of thing. You get placed in there, and I was in there quite a lot in my last few years of middle school because it was a new thing that was introduced while I was there. Once it was introduced, I was in there a lot because I was getting into fights with my friends and I was struggling in class and I was not doing my homework. And it got harder once I went to high school. I was very quickly labelled as the strange person, the crazy person in the school. And that kind of stayed with me throughout the whole of high school. And even when I was in year 11, the final year of school, even the year 7s knew me as the crazy person. So they did point fingers at me and laugh and snicker. But it was my peers, my own year group, that made it much difficult for me. I struggled to stay in a class. I often stormed out of my classrooms because I was sick and tired of this particular person taking the mick out of me non-stop. And I'm often found running out of the classroom and I'm being chased by my teacher saying that I shouldn't have run out. But actually, really, I needed to get out because what was happening to me was not okay. And I needed to get out of that room. But I was being told off for leaving that room. And lunchtimes were the worst. You'd think lunchtime would be a saving grace. No, not for me. I didn't have any friends. I had a few friends, but they were off with their own groups and they weren't even in my year group. So I didn't have any particular friends in my year group. And I spent my lunch breaks in the girls' bathroom. And it didn't take long for the popular girls to figure out where I was. At this point, I've locked myself in one of the toilet cubicles, trying to avoid. I'm playing on my DS, eating my lunch in the toilets. Not fun times. The girls eventually found out what I was doing and they were starting to crawl and climb to annoy me. So I ended up shifting to another girls' bathroom on the other side of the school campus. Eventually they figured that out as well. This continued throughout the whole thing. And I didn't get much support from my teachers. I had gone to them saying that I was being teased and basically tormented. I was never physically hurt like I hear some people have been. but to have to be verbally having lots of verbal, horrible, negative stuff thrown at me, it was really hard for me. I then was again not doing my homework. In fact, I never did my homework, Mum, did I? I never did my homework. Mum, bless her heart, tried to get me to do my homework, and I just could not do my homework because all I wanted to do was just escape from school life, and the homework was just reminding me of that, and I hated it. So I didn't do my homework. And when you don't do your homework, what happens when you go back to school? You go into detention, and I went into back-to-back detentions constantly. And not only that, I was put in detention for being late to school because I didn't want to go to school. So Mum, bless her heart, had to battle me in order to get out of the house so I wasn't late for school. I'm sorry, Mum.
It's okay. Given my time again, I don't think I would have forced you to go like that. I would have been sort of like bigger and stronger at sort of battling, for helping you to fight those battles. And you know, that's not okay, is it? None of that's okay. And I think it probably is fair to say that my own neurodiversity challenges, my own struggles with executive function and being organised, probably had an impact on Vicky not doing her homework. So bless her, she's saying I tried, and she's right that I did, but I wouldn't say it was a wholehearted effort, or that I had the skills or capacity to be as supportive as I wish I had been able to, but I wasn't able to.
Yeah, it was teachers didn't really do anything. They just put me in detention.
And detention didn't work.
Detention didn't work because I was just in detention till the end of my school life.
Nobody can stop you, Vicky. Nobody can try to stop you.
So yeah.
Someone's asked a question specifically, Vicky. We'll go back to the other questions in a second. What about the Senko? Did they help you? Would you be able to ask some like a trusted person?
Mrs. Ramsey, she was the head Senko of our secondary campus that half of the year group was transported to. Different story altogether. She became in charge of the Senko, and therefore I became her responsibility because my tutor struggled with me. My maths teacher struggled with me. My science teacher tried to sympathize with me. My English teacher could not handle me. My drama teacher was lovely to me. She was probably the nicest one that was there. My tutor obviously loved me because she loved my crazy ways, but she didn't know how to help me. She didn't know. But my Senko, she struggled with me. She was not particularly patient with me. I'm not trying to out her or anything, but she struggled with me, and not just me. There was a lot of difficult other students there as well, and she had to deal with a whole group of us. So she sorry.
In short, no.
No.
Okay.
And just to add to that, her Senko often used to say to me, I don't believe that Vicky does have autism. All the time.
I don't remember that.
But you know,
I don't remember that.
She was very wrong on that front, and I told her that often. So
it's nice to hear that people have had positive experiences with Senkos, and we hear that quite often.
Yeah.
Oh, the Senko's been wonderful, they've really helped. Neither of us had that experience.
No, but Will did. Will and Becca's Senko was absolutely great with Will. Diabolical with Becca. Everything was down to her periods.
Yeah, actually, someone's asked the question, do you feel that society has a negative stigma surrounding females with ADHD? And if so, what do you feel would be the most impactful change that we can implement from our level? So yes, I absolutely do think that. The Senko from my school, who made it literally impossible for me to get an ADHD diagnosis through the NHS, yeah, she was great with the boys. The boys all loved her. If you asked any of the girls at the school who would have any kind of problem with some kind of mental illness or family problems, anything, they would say she was absolutely useless. She just didn't have any interest. And ADHD in particular was a problem because she knew a man with ADHD, and therefore that's all she could see it as. She saw it as naughty boy syndrome. She actually compared it to cancer to me. I was like, pardon? Which was just insane. But yes, there is absolutely a stigma surrounding females with ADHD. We get diagnosed really, really significantly less than men and boys.
I think the ratio is 1 to 4, is it?
Yeah, something like that. And it's really strange. But I suppose when you look at it, it's because those behaviours aren't tolerated of girls. You kind of associate ADHD, a lot of people do, with getting into fights and calling out and being the class clown, and that's generally seen as a boy thing, I guess. So yeah, it's a huge problem. But how do we? What's the most impactful change that we could implement from our level? Is the last part of the question. What do you think?
What we implement, the change that we can implement, self-acceptance, self-awareness. So acceptance and commitment theory therapy is kind of my take on that. So looking at how your neurodiverse spectrum is impacting on your ability to function, accepting what you need to and changing what you can, whilst not changing and masking yourself. So when I say changing what you can, it's like putting strategies in place to make sure you're not late. Didn't manage that so well today, but I do, generally speaking, manage that quite well, and I have things in place to but I accept that I am time blind, for example. I accept that I will have good intentions to fill up with diesel the next time I get into the car, but actually the reality is I'm not going to remember to leave on time or leave early to do those things, and just knowing that I'm not going to do that. So that sort of self-understanding, that self-acceptance is the thing that makes the biggest change, I think, from my point of view, and for the people that I work with, and I think for my children too.
Yeah, definitely. And someone from my support group has asked, do you think ADHD affects relationship with partners, especially if one partner has ADHD?
Yes, and in a multitude of ways, not least of all, people with ADHD are more susceptible to ending up in negative relationships, where they're apologetic all the time for the things that are theirs. That whole process of all those negative messages we get in children that leave us with a legacy of not necessarily always liking and respecting ourselves enough can leave us vulnerable to abusive relationships. So that's problematic. But also it does, even if you're in a positive relationship, that can then we can be quite difficult to be in a relationship with, because although we've got great intentions, although we're really, really nice people, generally speaking, there's the consistency, the reliability, the financial struggles that come along with having ADHD. Of course they take their toll. Of course they do.
Yeah, I think that also a lot of things with ADHD, I've definitely had this with friends and relationships, is that people take things very personally. If I'm late somewhere, it's not because I don't want to see you or because I don't value your time. It's just because I lost track of time. If I forgot to get you a birthday card and I'm like, oh sorry, I'll get it and I'll give it to you as soon as I can, that's not because I don't care about you or your birthday. I just forgot. And people tend to take things very personally, which can definitely have impact on relationships. What do you think, Vicky? Do you have anything to add?
No, you've hit it right on the nail, especially with like the birthday cards and stuff. I simply forgot to send my friend a birthday card. I do it every year. I keep forgetting to send it to her. It's just one of those things.
I think the trick is to find friends who accept that that's not a reflection on. I mean, I have lovely friends that I've now had for a good a number of years, and we can pick up where we've left off and not speak to each other for a long time, and it's like there's been no time in between, and there's never any guilt and no shame and those sorts of things. And actually I think that's really important in a friendship with people like us, is that we don't deserve to be judged, because actually we're really lovely. I mean, I think we are anyway. We're nice people. We want the best of the people. We'll go out of our way for people. But we're consistently inconsistent. That's part of ADHD. That dysregulated way of being is part of who we are, and that must be hard for other people to manage and to handle. But it's that taking it personally, as Becca said, I think is the thing. It's like, it's not personal when we don't do these things. You can, and somebody can make a decision that it's not good enough, but they shouldn't take it personally, and they should understand it's not on purpose. It is just part of who we are,
Yeah, it definitely does take a toll on relationships, and that's all relationships. Some people have been talking about how the system fails girls, and someone has said, how can the system be overhauled to help girls? I have no idea.
I think we're on the way with it. I think people like us talking as openly about it. So events like this make a difference, because if you go away from here just knowing a little bit more, or feeling a little bit more empowered to share your story, I don't have people telling me that I'm lazy, or that I use it for an excuse, because I'm a professional and living, and I now I have 16 employees, so no one ever says those sorts of things for me to me. So it's easy for me to stand up and be proud and say I have ADHD, and that's not necessarily the problem that you expect it to be. It means I need to do things differently. So people being more prepared to come forward and speak openly. I did a webinar yesterday with Leah Leaves from the I Am ADHD movement. So that's hashtag I Am ADHD. And her name is Leah Leaves, Leah Leaves. And she's doing a collection of stories on women. And we similarly at ADHD Wise UK are doing a collection of stories, which is going into a book with a sort of psychological sort of like weaving of the stories together, and using those stories to explain a few concepts to people. So things like that are going to make a big difference. The more people come forward and talk openly about it. People like Simone Biles, for example, is really open about her ADHD and how it impacts upon her, and how it doesn't need to be seen negatively. But it doesn't need to be celebrities and sports people and everything else. Actually, real life role models are really important. So myself and Becca a few years back did a program with Channel 5. So if you go to YouTube Channel 5 and type in ADHD, myself and Becca will pop up. So we do what we can, and we associate with other people who are also doing things that get the female story out there, so that we can challenge those stereotypes by being brilliant and who we are. Not by masking, dropping the mask and being who we are.
Yeah. I think we just got one last thing. Someone has said, would you like me and my daughter to share our stories? They are different, as my daughter was understood by her mum. I wasn't. Do you mean now, as in talk?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine.
Bearing in mind that it's going out, it will go out widely. Yeah, that's absolutely
fine. Yeah, I'm daughter. I'm in a different location to my mum at the moment, which is why we're on separate screens. But it was really interesting growing up with a mum that did completely understand me, because although we both were undiagnosed, she was also ADHD, so completely understood me. But also massively that impacted my life is growing up with parents that were absolutely on par with each other, on level, even though my dad doesn't have an ounce of ADHD in him. And I think that massively impacted me, because like what you were saying about the relationships and stuff, like I haven't experienced that at all. I've been in a relationship now for 4 years, well, nearly, and like he's absolutely lovely. I mend with him so well. He like understands my ADHD, but like is so like open and aware about that, and I'm so lucky to have that, because I know it's a rarity. But But I think that's massively worked off from my experience with my parents, because I have never had that kind of awareness of the fact that ADHD could be negative in a relationship. It was only until I did research into it. And speaking about like just, sorry, I'm speaking quite fast to try and get through. So if anyone, I can slow down, it's fine. But my kind of growing up, I was diagnosed when I was 18, and mum had just been diagnosed, which is why she was like, you are totally ADHD, you need to get this diagnosis. And the first GP I went to, I poured my heart out for 2 hours, and she turned around and said, no, you can't have ADHD because you're not suffering. One of those, like the two reasons that she said that I wasn't suffering is because I had a relationship with my mum, like I had a relationship with my parents, so I couldn't be suffering. The second was because I was doing well in school, and because I was doing well in school, I couldn't be suffering. However, in the same conversation that we were having, I did admit to her that I had self-harmed for 7 years. So I wasn't too sure whether not suffering part came in, but yeah, and I'm completely open to talk about that, so it's absolutely fine. But that's way past. But yeah, so, and then I massively in school, I same experience as Vicky, like not different in detention, but bullying in school, absolutely. Like that was, I so relate to that. Luckily, my mum had taught me the give her the gab, and so actually my technique was to not do the homework until the night before, be friends with the teachers, and then they'd let me off. So that was my technique. I was an absolute goody two-shoes, teacher's pet for the first 3 minutes of the lesson, did no work after that, got all good score reports, yeah, so but then now I'm like, I've gone through, I didn't do that well in my A levels, but I managed to get onto a course at university doing psychology, and then which is probably going to make mum cry, but I managed to get a first at university, and that's allowed me to now do a master's, and I'm now applying for a PhD in ADHD. So that's why I was trying to talk about like what stuff can we implement, what stuff can we get out there, because my absolute dream is to be on a kind of working party for the government in kind of mental health and education, because I so want this to go out there, and this kind of stuff, which is incredible, I so want to push this forward and yeah, and be out there. But I know it was an incredibly different experience for my mum, and I know that's why the differences in our experiences has made my understanding of ADHD so much more kind of in depth. And also I have a diagnosis of ADHD and anxiety as well, so I totally resonate with you on the whole.
Yeah, I hear you on the teacher's pet thing. I was the biggest teacher's pet going there. I think I was, most of my teachers, I was the biggest suck up ever, and I got away.
Yeah, massively.
But I was quite academic, so I kind of didn't have to do that much work, so I just kind of got away with it. But yeah, I had a few teachers who really didn't like me, and that like really like struck me, because I was like, why not?
Why not? I'm fine. I'm brilliant.
I'm not doing any work, Becca. Yeah, no, I completely hear that. That's fantastic about university.
Yeah, and like that's the thing, is I feel like also mum can like kind of speak about it, but by God, mum was a fighter. Like, oh my God, I used to walk out of parents' evening because she'd made my teacher cry. Like, yeah.
Oh dear.
But yeah, no, I totally owe my
I think that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the confidence in my daughter, and that was because I was with her the whole time. I had no confidence when I was at school. I spent more time outside the lessons because I just couldn't handle being in the lessons, because I was totally ununderstood by everybody. It's amazing that I didn't go off the roads. The one thing that saved me was someone bought me a dog, and it was me and my dog against the world. So I really struggled when I was young. And I think
we may also relate to that. We may also relate to that.
Yeah.
So relate. But that's what we can do for our girls with ADHD, is to understand them, talk to them, let them be themselves. That is by far the most important thing. Molly survived because she learned how to play the system.
Massively. Oh my God, massively. Literally.
The other thing I want to say, Molly, is that, you know, you said about you being lucky that you're in a relationship with somebody who values you. Actually, that's no less than you deserve. And what your mum did by understanding you and supporting you as you are, rather than encouraging you to mask or change, was taught you what you're worth, and therefore that's what you found. So mum sort of like being able to be like that with you is very protective of your future self.
Yeah, massively. And I literally owe everything that I've done to my mum, just because it's meant that but it's just, I think the amount of times, like, I just so much stuff that happened, like my A levels, because I was doing English, maths and psychology, they were all on the same time, and so there was this mixed mocks, and so I sat down and I hadn't done any English revision at all, because I thought it was like 2 weeks time. And I sat down and they gave me the English paper. And I can just remember coming home that day and like bursting into tears and being like, I got all the wrong order of my exams, and like it wasn't my fault at all. And I can remember mum like marching over to the school and like telling them off. But yeah, anyway, I'm so sorry. I'm actually at my boyfriend's at the moment. Do you want to? You can come if you want. I've got dinner. I'm really sorry. I've got to go.
Molly, send me an email if you're interested in sharing your story.
My boyfriend.
If you're interested in sharing your story, send us an email.
Yes, yeah, please. And I would absolutely love to stay in contact.
I like you. I like you.
You're cool. Go and have your dinner.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got to get my dinner. I'm so sorry.
No problem.
That's why I was like trying to jump in, because I was like, I know I got dinner. Anyway, you're absolutely lovely.
Lovely to meet you.
Bye, Molly.
Bye.
Bye, gorgeous.
And Sarah, I can see why that your pride in her is overwhelming. So lovely. Thank you for that share. You're muted.
Yeah, but the other thing is, I have another younger daughter who is very different, and she. I mean, me and Molly are so close, as you can see, but my younger daughter, who I think is on the spectrum, but she so hates ADHD because her mum and her sister are. I mean, she's even said if she ever has an ADHD son, we have to look after him because she doesn't want him. And she struggled. She has struggled big time living in the household. Because, you know, when I was young, when the kids were young, when everything got too much, I would explode. And me and Molly, our moods would be like this, and with a massive explosion, and then we would just snap out of it and move on like ADHD. Whereas Amy was left with all this massive explosion, and she was left in a sort of going, what's going on? What's going on? You know, so she has struggled. And so, you know, it's all swings and roundabouts, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and it's challenging, isn't it?
And she's younger, and I'm sure by the time she gets to Molly's age, she'll come out the other side. I mean, Molly's 22 now, so different from when she was 16, 17, 18. Oh my God.
Yeah, I get that.
I've said enough.
Thank you for sharing.
Lovely what you're doing.
Thank you.
Someone has asked, how is your oldest daughter doing now? So that's you.
That's me. I'm going to go quickly back to something. I'm going to go back to what was mentioned about having a dog. I'm going to go back to my high school years. Because of everything that I experienced, as soon as school was over, I would immediately go straight. As soon as Friday came, I would go straight home, and I wouldn't come out of the house until Monday morning to go back to school. I was becoming antisocial, and it worried Mum a lot. So she decided, let's get a dog. So we got a Labrador puppy, and immediately after getting him, I came out of my shell. I was going out walking this puppy, and interacting with people, because everybody loved him and everybody obviously loved the owner. So, and I was talking and I was gaining confidence and experience, and I don't even know what I would have been like if we didn't own Jack. I think I would have been slightly different from what I am now, because I'd probably struggle to talk today if I didn't have him, because I was becoming really, really antisocial. But having the dog was a huge improvement to my life, and I thank Mum for giving me that amazing experience. How am I doing now? I'm doing a lot better because of my ADHD being diagnosed, and my friends are accepting and love me for who I am, and Mum embracing the ADHD in me and everybody. Life has been so much better. Finding out I had ADHD has like changed my life for good, actually, because now I know why things weren't going well before diagnosis. And now I'm going on to my seventh year of working in a charity shop, which I absolutely love, and that my managers and my co-workers adore me for who I am. I will literally go in there wearing a wig or in some kind of costume and serve people behind the till, and it brings customers joy, and it makes my co-workers and managers laugh, and it makes me feel good doing that, expressing myself by dressing up. And I never had that confidence before, but I found it. I was like, I used to wear, well, actually still do. I suddenly started wearing cat ears in my later years of college, and people did try to put me down on it. I immediately put my foot down and was like, no, this is who I am, and I'm not going to let anybody now tell me to stop that. What I'm wearing is stupid, or you look ridiculous, what a kid. No, this is me, and I love who I am, and I'm going to express it. I do not care what people say.
Yeah. So do you want to tell people a bit about what else you're doing? So you living on your own and stuff like that, how you're doing in the rest of your life, because obviously you've come really far with self-acceptance, and your work in the charity shop is wonderful, but there's other great aspects to your life now too, aren't there?
Yes, I rent a little property of my own and it's my little cozy bubble, and I absolutely love it. I've lived there for nearly 7 years now, and having that place has been a godsend. I absolutely love it, and it's definitely helped me learn a few things about myself, like independence. Obviously, there's not to say that there are drawbacks because I'm ADHD, but having that responsibility and independence is really great, and a great learning curve as well. I'm also fortunate because if I get myself in a pickle while I'm in my flat, Mum and my sister and Will, anybody will be there to help me out if I'm struggling. So help is always around, even though I live independently.
I think that was one of the hardest things, actually, when Vicky's talking about wearing cat ears and things. I remember that day, and I remember saying to Vicky, the cat ears are going to get you the wrong kind of attention, and she said, no, I'm going to wear cat ears because that's who I am. And I remember sort of like really being taken aback, and it really challenged my perspective of my role as Vicky's mum, and made me realise I needed to shift and accept things about her that were kind of perhaps hard for me. And I think parents do need to shift and accept the reality of the child they have rather than the one they kind of maybe thought they were going to have. And Vicky is amazing. She's fun-loving, and she lives her life to the fullest that she can. My role is to support that rather than to have any expectations of where she might work or what she might do or what she might study, and those things had to go out the window, and I had to accept Vicky as Vicky is. and allow Vicky to make mistakes. That happens, but we don't ever approach that with judgment. We always approach that with compassion and curiosity, and sort of like, pick up pieces and move things forward. But again, it comes down to accepting Vicky for absolutely who she is, and she is the driver in her own life. We'll always need my support, and that's okay.
Yeah. And Vicky's also in a very happy long-term relationship. She's got a great group of friends. We all have a great relationship as a family. There's lots of great things in your life, aren't there? And I'm sure that lots of things that you weren't expecting, that you never would have imagined at 18. Things you never would have imagined when you were 16 in your last year of school. But yeah, Vicky is wonderful, and she's doing wonderfully, to answer your question. She's fab. Right, so we're just going through the chat. People are saying that we're all very inspiring. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We all inspire each other every day, don't we?
I think so. There's no Mary Poppins in this house. Nobody is practically perfect.
No.
We're all perfectly imperfect.
Yeah. People talking about also being there for their daughters. I think we've got a lot of mama bears in this film, haven't we?
Yeah, be that mum bear. Don't be afraid to be that parent.
Absolutely. We shouldn't have to mould ourselves to fit into social norms if we are not harming anyone. Absolutely not. The world serves neurotypical people because it was created for and by neurotypical people. There is absolutely nothing wrong with any of us or any of your children, any of your family or friends. We are all perfect just the way we are, and we deserve to live in this world just like anyone else. I hope I've never felt like
so. My youngest daughter is also amazing and doing marvellously well. Forthright young lady and all that.
What have we got here?
People talking about also expressing themselves.
Yeah.
With the hair and the tattoos. As you should. You enjoy your life. You
queen.
Yeah, queen.
You queen.
Yeah.
Put on your crown.
We love it. We love self-confidence. That's wonderful to hear. Has anyone else got any questions? I don't think I've missed anybody, but I might have because my vision isn't fantastic.
I don't think you've missed anything because you've looked back a few times.
Yeah.
Okay, so unless there's no more questions, I think it's probably time to go and enjoy our Saturday evening. I'd like to say thank you to everybody for joining us this evening. There will be more of these things. This was something we put on for Neurodiversity Week, but it will go onto our YouTube channel, and as will lots of other things. And hopefully we can work together, all of us, to challenge the stigma and talk about the hard stuff, but also the positive stuff that is associated with being different, being neurodiverse, and that being coming at it from a strength perspective and a solution-focused perspective, rather than looking at it from it being a great big problem that's insurmountable and then we are all doomed, because we are not. We're all marvellous just as we are. And again, thank you for joining us, everybody.
Yeah,
it's been nice to chat to you this evening. Bye.
Okay. Right, bye everybody.
Bye.